I am 84 years old, and I am going to tell you something that nobody in this country wants to say out loud. Growing old in America is one of the loneliest, most humiliating, most quietly brutal experiences a human being can go through, and we do not talk about it. We put it in nursing homes and behind closed doors, and we slap a greeting card on it that says, "Aging gracefully," and we look away. I am done looking away. I have earned the right to say this, not because I am angry, though I am a little angry, but because I have lived it. I am living it right now. And if you are young enough to still think this conversation does not apply to you, I need you to understand something. It will, faster than you think. And the country you are building right now, the culture you are maintaining right now, is the one you are going to grow old inside of. So you might want to pay attention to what I am about to tell you. I spent 40 years working in this country. I paid my taxes. I raised my children. I believed in the deal, the unspoken agreement that if you contributed, if you built something, if you were a decent and productive member of this society, the society would have something left for you at the end. Not luxury, not comfort beyond your means, just dignity, just the basic human experience of being seen and valued, and not made to feel like a problem that nobody knows how to solve. I believed in that deal completely, and somewhere along the way, without anyone announcing it, without anyone voting on it, the deal changed, and nobody told the old people. I want to tell you about a man named Walter. I met Walter in a rehabilitation facility 4 years ago after my hip surgery. Walter was 79 years old, a retired school teacher, sharp as anyone I have ever met. The kind of man who could talk about history and literature and still beat you at cards without breaking a sweat. Walter had a daughter in Phoenix and a son in Seattle, and a room full of get well cards on the windowsill when I arrived. By the time I left 3 weeks later, the cards were still there, and the visits were not. His daughter had come once. His son had not come at all. Walter did not complain about it. That was the part that got me. He explained their schedules to me with the practiced understanding of a man who had spent years making other people's absence comfortable for everyone, including himself. He said they are busy. He said it the way you say the weather is cold, as a simple fact that cannot be argued with and does not require comfort. Walter had a photograph on his bedside table of himself at maybe 40 years old, standing in front of a classroom full of children who were all looking at him like he was the most important person in the room, because he was. Because to those children on that day, he was the person who held the key to something they needed, and he gave it to them freely, every single day, for 30 years. And now he was lying in a facility bed, waiting for a phone call that came less and less, and making excuses for the people who should have been making them for themselves. Walter's lunch tray arrived every day at noon. The aide who brought it was kind, but had 14 other trays to deliver and could not stay. Walter ate alone most days, not because nobody cared, because the system was not built around caring. It was built around efficiency. And efficiency and dignity are not the same thing, though we keep pretending they are. Now here is what most people think this conversation is about. They think it is about health care costs, or Social Security, or the logistics of elder care policy. And yes, those things matter. I am not dismissing any of it. But what I am talking about is older and simpler and harder to legislate. I am talking about what a culture believes its old people are worth. I am talking about what happens when a society decides, not in any meeting, not with any vote, but in 1,000 small daily decisions, that its elderly are inconvenient, that they are expensive, that they are a weight rather than a resource, that the wisdom in their bodies and the history in their memories and the love they have to give is less valuable than the productivity they can no longer produce. What we built versus who we forgot. That is the real conversation. I have watched this country's relationship with its old people shift across my entire lifetime. When I was a child, old people lived with their families. Not always happily, not always easily, but together. The grandmother was in the house. The grandfather sat on the porch. They were inconvenient sometimes. They were demanding sometimes. They slowed things down and took up space and required patience. But they were there. They were woven into the fabric of daily life in a way that meant children grew up understanding that old age was a part of life, not a departure from it. That the old person in the chair had once been young and had a story, and still had something to offer, and would be treated accordingly. Then something changed. Then we got wealthy enough to outsource it, and efficient enough to schedule it, and uncomfortable enough with mortality to prefer it happen somewhere we did not have to see it. And now we have an entire generation of old people who built this country and are spending their final years in rooms that smell like disinfectant, waiting for a visit that comes less frequently every year. I am not blaming the children entirely. I want to be fair about this. The economy that generation inherited does not make it easy. People are working harder and living farther apart and carrying more financial pressure than my generation did. And they are stretched in ways that are real and legitimate. I understand that. But I also know what it feels like to be on the other side of it. I know what it feels like to become optional, to go from being a person with a full and necessary life to being something that gets fitted into someone else's calendar when there is room. That transition happens slowly enough that you almost do not notice it happening. And then one day you realize it is complete, and you are sitting in a quiet room with a telephone that does not ring as often as it used to, and a body that requires more maintenance than it used to, and a world that was not designed with you in mind anymore. The stores are designed for people who move fast. The technology is designed for people who learned it young. The television shows are designed for people who have not yet had to think about death. The doctors give you 11 minutes if you are lucky, and talk to you in language that assumes you either understand everything or nothing. There is no in-between. The forms are online now. The customer service is automated now. The world keeps accelerating, and the old person in it keeps feeling more and more like someone who missed the last train and is standing on a platform that is slowly being demolished around them. I went to renew my driver's license 2 years ago. The process had moved almost entirely online. I do not struggle with technology the way some of my peers do, but I watched a woman in her 80s in line near me, trying to explain to a young clerk that she did not have the email address the form required, because she had never needed one before. And the clerk was patient but visibly baffled by the idea that someone could exist without an email address in the modern world. The woman was not stupid. She was not behind. She was 83 years old and had lived a full life in the previous system, and the new system had simply been built without her in mind. She left without completing her renewal. She walked out slowly, and nobody followed her to help. The line moved forward. The world moved forward. She went to park her car that she could no longer legally drive and figure out how to get home. That is what I mean when I say this country has a problem. Not a policy problem first, a values problem first. We have decided, quietly and collectively, that old people are the previous version of the software and the update is not coming. And old people feel that. We feel it in the spaces between things, in the way conversations accelerate past us, in the way our opinions get the particular respectful nod that means noted and will not be acted on, in the way our bodies, which ache and slow and require more care, are treated as failures of maintenance rather than the honest and inevitable record of a life fully lived. Here is what I want you to understand. The old person you will become is watching how you treat old people right now. That sounds like a fortune cookie, and I do not care. It is true. Every time you talk over an elderly person in a meeting, every time you speed past the slow walker on the sidewalk with visible impatience, every time you decide the call to your aging parent can wait until the weekend, you are writing the instructions for how you yourself will be treated when you get there. And you will get there. I guarantee it. If you are lucky, you will get there. And the culture you maintain now is the culture that will receive you then. I do not want your pity. I want to be clear about that. I am not asking you to feel sorry for old people. We do not need your pity. We need your presence. We need to be in the room where things are decided, not as symbols of the past, but as people who have navigated more versions of hard than most rooms have seen, and who have something to offer because of it. We need systems that were designed with the understanding that human beings do not stop being human when they stop being productive. We need a culture that treats the end of life with the same seriousness and tenderness that it treats the beginning of it. Because how a society treats its most vulnerable is the only honest measure of what that society actually values, regardless of what it says about itself. Walter died in that rehabilitation facility 8 months after I met him. His daughter made it in time. His son did not. I think about him every time I hear someone talk about their parents like a logistical problem they are managing, rather than a person they are loving. I think about that photograph on his bedside table, 40 years old, standing in front of 30 children who were all looking at him like he was the most important person in the room. He was. He still was. He just had no one left to tell him so. Be someone who tells them so. That is the whole lesson. That is all I have.